Hi, this is Shelley Hitz, and I'm a Christian author and a speaker, and I'm so excited to be here with you this evening, and just so thankful to be part of this Porn Harms event, the White Ribbon Against Pornography. And just wanted to share a little bit about why I even do what I do. Are you hearing it?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm getting like a little.
All right, sorry about that. Just wanted to make sure that the audio was coming through okay, and it is. So I'm going to mute my computer so that there's not any background noise. But like I said, my name is Shelley Hitz, and I'm a Christian author and a speaker, and never intended on writing books or speaking, especially not writing a book about pornography. I've co-authored a book called A Christian Woman's Guide to Breaking Free from Pornography. It's not just a guy's problem. And my co-author Sam Rocha Curtis and I just recently released this book just a couple months ago. And like I said, I never intended on being an author. I'm trained as a physical therapist, and I practiced for 12 years. And yet there's so many times that life takes us on twists and turns. I like to say, those twists and turns that God has in our life. And I like to use this analogy that for those of you that like to go shopping, that imagine that your favorite place to shop is having a 99% off sale. But let's say that all your friends went, all your family went, everybody that you knew went to that sale, got everything great, and then they forgot to tell you. You were at home sleeping in bed. And so, when I'm doing this live, a lot of times I'll, ask, well, how would that make you feel? And most people will say, I'm disappointed, I'm left out, sometimes even angry. And, in a way, that is an illustration that describes a little bit about what's happened in my life. You see, I grew up in the church. I grew up in a pastor's home, knowing a lot of, things, about God and about the Bible. But there were so many things that I was never told, that no one ever shared with me. A deeper healing in my heart that was needed that I didn't experience till my late 20s. And so it's almost like finding that 99% off sale and thinking, why hasn't somebody told me about this before? Why didn't anyone tell me? And so that's why I do what I do, because now I want to share with others the hope that I found in Christ, the healing, and just the relationship with Christ that truly has set me free in so many areas. And just to get started, one of those areas that that Christ has set me free from is pornography. I was the good girl, I did have a rebellious time in high school, but I recommitted my life to Christ my junior year of high school, and since then have been living for Him. I'm 37 years old, so I just celebrated 20 years I've been walking in a relationship with God. But I was married. My husband was in Christian ministry. We were active in our church, and I got caught up in pornography. For me, it was internet pornography, and it was something I never ever thought would happen to me. I never thought that it was something that I would ever struggle with. And I don't even remember exactly how it happened the first time. I don't know if it was a pop-up or if it was a curiosity, I don't even exactly remember, but it progressed. And I remember thinking and feeling like I was this proverbial frog in a pot of water. And you've probably heard this illustration where, you put that frog in a boiling pot of water, and what is it going to do? It's going to jump out. And so I think, if I would have been tempted, or if I would have tried to, get into hardcore pornography right away, I would have been like, no way, I would have jumped out, and I wouldn't have, I would have just said no. no, I'm not going to do that. But for me, it started with the soft porn. It started with the sexual image, sensual images, and it wasn't even nudity at first. But gradually, with that frog in the pot of water, if you put it in a pot of water that's cold or room temperature, and then gradually turn the heat up, what's going to happen to that frog? More than likely, it's going to get cooked. And I felt like in my spiritual life, and particularly with my struggle with pornography, I felt like the heat just kept turning up, and I just kept giving in. And after a while, it felt like I couldn't stop, and it felt like I was getting cooked. And I started to get into the hardcore pornography, and it really did scare me. I, never, like I said, never thought that I would be getting into something like that. And so I think it was just one of those moments where I was just like, whoa, this is something that I need help. It's going to destroy my spiritual life. It's going to destroy my marriage and so many other things if I don't get help. And so it took a little while, but eventually I was able to talk to my husband and to get help from that. But I'm so happy to say that it's been a decade now that I have been free. And it wasn't just an instant thing. It wasn't like a cold turkey thing. I think pornography is different. I think some other addictions, you can just instantly, just go cold turkey off of cigarettes or alcohol or different things. And some people do, do just stop with the pornography. But for me, it was like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. And it was a process, and a process of healing as well. And so I just want you to know that, I share these things not to share my dirty laundry with the world, but to talk specifically, if there are women, especially Christian women, that are caught in this, I know how you feel. And I know how lonely it can be and how you feel like you are alone. But you're not alone, and there is hope, and there's resources, and you're not the only woman to have ever struggled with pornography. That's the lie that I believed. When I was struggling, I thought I was the most perverted person in the world, that I was the only woman to ever have struggled with pornography, because it's labeled as a guy's problem. It's labeled as a guy's thing, and yet women are getting trapped in it as well. And I just wanted to share a few statistics just to show that tonight. And there was a statistic recently that said out of the 40 million people that struggle with pornography, or that regularly visit pornography sites, 33% of them are women. So about a third of those that regularly visit pornographic websites are women. And then another survey that was done, it was done by Today's Christian Women, and they surveyed Christian women in particular. And in their survey, 34% admitted to intentionally visiting pornographic websites, or to looking at pornography. So it is something that women are having an issue with. It's not just an isolated case here or there. It's not just a few people here or there. I think it's becoming more and more prevalent than we even know. And it's such a secret thing. It's such a private thing. You can do it and not have anyone know. And so I think that so many more are struggling with it than maybe even the statistics share. But I have a website for teen girls. It's called findyourtruebeauty.com, and I have adults and adult women and girls that come to this website for resources. And I just was like, several years ago, I was like, is this even an issue amongst Christians? Is this even something? The sexting, the pornography, the erotica novels, is this even an issue? So I ended up doing my own survey, and several hundred people, lots of people took it, but it was only a couple hundred that were actually Christian and marked that they were Christian. So I took those out. It's a very small survey, but of the of the people that filled out the survey, 18% admitted to being addicted to pornography. This was women, and these are Christians. And most likely, a majority of them are from the United States. But it was pretty much, it was an eye-opener for me. And almost a fourth of the people that took the survey, the Christian girls and women, said that they had sent a nude picture of themselves to someone and had been involved in sexting. So, I realized, yeah, this is an issue. And it was about 3 years ago that it was, I think it was in my journals, I was looking back, and it was 2009 that I really sensed God asking me to start sharing my testimony about struggling with pornography and breaking free. And I didn't want to. I have to admit, I was just like, oh, do I have to? It's just, it was not something that you really want to talk about. Every time I do an interview or a presentation about it, it's just, it almost makes my stomach upset, because it's something that is not, it's not pleasant to be talking about and to be admitting that has been part of your past. But I eventually did start sharing publicly, and about 3 years ago, I would share as part of our presentation on the power of forgiveness. And I talk about how, it's important to forgive others, to ask God for forgiveness, but also to forgive ourselves. And that's the part that I felt God asking me to share, because for a long time, even though I had broken free from the pornography, I still struggled with that regret and the shame of the past. And so I began to share. And as I began to share, almost every time that I would publicly talk about how I had struggled, a woman or a teen girl would come up to me and confess, many times for the first time, that they struggled as well. And I was able to talk with them, to pray with them. And it just, it was just a thing that continued to happen, that I would continue to, have women and teen girls come up to me, talk to me about this. Yet this last February, we were at a youth retreat. And at that youth retreat, someone again came up and talked to me. And she herself personally didn't struggle, but she said she was like the chaplain of her floor at a Christian college. And she said, Shelley, can I talk to you? She said, there are just about, she said, almost all the girls on my floor struggle with pornography, and I don't know how to help them. She said, I can't find any resources. I don't know what to do. Can you help me? I said, well, let's meet back, and we can talk a little bit more about it. And so we met back, and we started talking. And we talked for probably over an hour. And I tried to give her as much, just counsel and resources and advice as I could. And we corresponded in email a little bit. But there was just this resounding feeling I could not shake when, she said, there's just not resources out there for Christians, that are Christian women that are struggling with this. And it wasn't long after that I really sensed God was saying, it's time to write a resource. It's time to write this book. And even if it was just for the few people that I interact with, when we speak, and I have a resource that I can hand them and I can give them, or I can mail them and I can send them something, tangible that I can, write out just the journey that I had been on. And so that's kind of how the book idea even came to be. It was just from the need that we saw. And so, like I said, I had struggled, with the pornography. And a lot of people will ask me, how is it that a woman gets caught up in pornography? And from counseling several, different teen girls and women, one of the things we do notice that is similar, or that seems to be very common, it's not true with everybody, But one thing that does seem to be common is that there has been a history of sexual abuse. And there was a history for me. I had an instance of sexual abuse when I was in junior high. And, you know, I can't say for sure, and I'm not going to blame it on anything from my past. But all I want to say is that sometimes in our life, there has been a time when a door has been opened to sexual sin and to sexual strongholds. And it could be that it was our own doing. It could be something that we did. It could be something that was done to us. It could be a family history that just predisposes, you know, to us to some of these things. But for me, I had several of those things. I had the sexual abuse. I had stuff that I did on my own sin. And then there's also the family history on both sides of my family of different kinds of sexual strongholds. And so I know that I was more vulnerable to giving into sexual sin. And whether that means it's pornography or having an affair or you know, something else, I just know that for me personally, that's something I'm more vulnerable to. And we're all different. We all have different things. Now, I talked to a teenage girl one time, and she came up to me after one of my presentations, and she shared that she also struggled with pornography. Now, for her, her story was that she's a writer and she loves to write. And so she was a part of a writing community. It wasn't a Christian writing community, but just a writing community online. And she was posting some of her writings, and you know, they get feedback and they get to talk to each other and that sort of thing. And she had somebody that approached her and said, "Hey, would you be willing to read my writings?" And she was like, "Sure, why not?" You know? And they started sending her some stuff, and the stuff started getting more and more sexual. And they sent her some really strong erotica, basically, you know, very graphic sex scenes. And she really got hooked on that, and it led to other things. And so for her, it was something that had been presented to her, a door that had been opened in that way. She wasn't looking for it. It wasn't something that she was even interested in. But that was a way that the door was opened in her life. I have another girl, as one of my friends that I was talking to, and um, she had been sexually assaulted and raped, and you know, in her past. But she said, you know, she also had an instance where she had a boyfriend that forced her to watch pornography. And she said, you know, Shelley, it was the weirdest thing. She was like, when he forced me to watch that pornography, it she's like, I almost got the same kind of feelings like when I had been raped. And so you know, she was saying that you know, that she, you know, had felt some of those similar feelings of being taken advantage of and that sort of thing. But for her, the door was opened by a boyfriend. And what we found in our small survey is that a lot of teen girls, a lot of women are first introduced to pornography from someone else. So a family member, a husband, a boyfriend, and it's just so common anymore. It's just so readily accessible with smartphones, with, you know, just computers and tablets, iPads, all of these things that have the, you know, availability of pictures, internet, video. It's just very easy to get exposed to it. And, you know, I can't, you know, I don't know exactly why some people then get hooked, but you know, the door was opened in some way. And so, you know, those are just, you know, a few stories of, you know, women getting caught up into it. Now, sometimes, you know, women may just be interested or may want to spice up their sex life or, you know, something like that. Or maybe they start reading some soft, you know, they might call it like soft porn, like the erotica novels. You know, the real popular ones right now are the 50 Shades of Grey. You know, get into something like that, and then it progresses, and it just fuels a fire within them for something more. And I'm just reading one of the comments here. It said, Shelley, I'm noticing in my own recovery from pornography that once you broke free, did you notice new thorns in its place? For example, I'm leaving porn, but now illicit erotic material has crept in. Can you relate? And if so, how did you deal? You know, I think that is true. And one of the things that I share in my book is that although I had broken free from pornography, I still struggled with those feelings of lust and of just those sexual temptations. And one of the things that was really a stronghold for me and a very strong temptation was flirting with other men and just having those, what I call an emotional affair. So I wanted the attention of men. I wanted to have their approval and to be, you know, attractive and to get their attention. And you know, I wasn't dressing in a complete immodest way. Like I wasn't showing a bunch of cleavage or wearing like mini skirts, but I definitely knew how to dress to get attention. And I knew how to act too. I mean, it's not just in how you dress, it's how you interact and act. And so, you know, during that time, I'm not proud to say, but I did, you know, get connected with some men at, you know, that where I was working. And I would say that, you know, I even had an emotional affair. But praise God, I know that it was God's grace that it did not go further. There was a point in the whole process that I thought about walking away from my marriage, of walking away from my relationship with God. And yet I just know that it was Christ. It was Jesus that that made the difference. I mean, I cannot explain it any other way, but um, so I noticed for me, it was those types of things. And God really started to say, Shelley, I want you to have purity in all areas. I want you to have sexual purity in every area, in the way you dress, in the way you act. And not that we have to be like a prude, you know, or that we can't look nice or we can't talk to guys ever. But for me personally, that was a stronghold. And for my marriage and for my relationship with God, I knew that some things had to change. And so, you know, I really, I noticed that. Another thing that I noticed, some people will say when they're trying to break the addiction of masturbation, you know, especially that, you know, they'll go to food or to something else like that. And I think for me, I did struggle with both pornography and masturbation. And I think for me, I probably traded some of the pornography and masturbation addiction for a workaholic addiction. And so I'm an achiever, a worker, and it's still something that God is working in me. He's still bringing that complete healing and freedom. But I think it's so easy to switch one addiction for the other, and that's why, you know, even in the book that I wrote, I really talk about how it's important to go even deeper. So not just the filters and accountability stuff on your computer, which I do recommend, and we use those, and those are great. But not just the behavior modification things, not just setting up, okay, I'm not going to go there, or I'm not going to be here, or you know, just those outward um, things that we can put in place, but it has to go deeper. And for me, it had to go inward. And when I first told my husband that I was struggling with pornography, I asked him, I said, I have tried on my own to quit and I can't. And I tried the self-help. I tried the behavioral modification. I tried to, you know, like in my power, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And then I would do it. And it was so frustrating. And you know, I told him, I said, I just really feel like I need some counseling. And I know everyone's journey is different. And that's one thing, like with any kind of addiction, like with whether it's pornography or something else, I don't believe there's any one set way or one set system, because everyone is different and we all have a different past. There's different things that will help us more than others. But for me personally, um, Christian counseling really helped me. And one of the things that the counselor helped me address was my relationship with my father. And although my dad, he's a wonderful father, he was a great provider, he was physically at all of my games and my show choirs and everything like that. But, he will even tell you and admit that when, it wasn't until I was an adult that he was able to express his emotions and his feelings. His dad was an alcoholic and was not there for him, did not provide financially well for him, would not forget to pick him up at school, stuff like that. So he was determined he was going to be different, and he was. He was a great financial provider, and like I said, he was there physically for me, but he didn't know how to connect emotionally with me. And so there was that feeling of, I think what I call it now is an emotional neglect. And so one of the things the counselors helped me work through was just a restoration in my relationship with my dad. And it was, it works different for everyone. Sometimes it's just, you forgiving that person, and maybe God doesn't prompt you to actually talk to them about it. But for me personally, I actually did meet with my dad, and I talked with him about what I was going through. I did tell him that I had been struggling with pornography, and I was doing counseling, and these were some things I was working out, and I read a letter to him. And it makes me feel emotional even thinking about it now, because God just really did a healing in my relationship with my dad. And that was really the start to a deeper healing in my heart. Another thing that God really led me personally to is just forgiving the person that had sexually abused me. And there was some forgiveness that I needed to offer him. I didn't want to. I didn't feel like he deserved it. But God began to show me that it was a weight that I was carrying, and that in order to really be free in this area of sexuality, that I needed to forgive, and I needed to receive healing for that area as well. And so there was just some deeper things that God began to do. And, like I said, it's going to be different for each one of us. For some people, maybe there's nothing like that in their past that they need to work through. But maybe there is. And that was one of the things growing up in the church. I was a pastor's kid. And, I always felt like I had to be perfect. And I don't know why you feel that way, but, a lot of times you just grow up thinking, okay, I'm supposed to be this good Christian person and not make any mistakes. And I grew up in a church that was loving. There was some good biblical teaching, but there wasn't really that openness and that vulnerability. For me to just sit here and to share that I've struggled, with this particular sin. I mean, I don't really remember people talking like that or sharing testimonies in that way, and really, feeling permitted to do that. And so, I think that was one of the things that God really began to do in my heart, was to restore some of that brokenness in my life. And one of the illustrations I use, though, with the whole thing about pornography, sexual sin, it's so easy to keep it a secret, and it's so easy to keep it in the darkness where people don't know about it. And it's similar to, my husband often uses this illustration. It's similar to mold. Mold grows most when it's in the darkness, but when you bring mold out into the light, that's when it begins to die away. And I really believe that when I decided, and it wasn't like I was just like, okay, I'm going to do this. I really believe, that it was the Holy Spirit that was empowering me. But, once I took that step and I confessed my sin to my husband, I confessed to my counselor, and then I had an accountability partner. She was my best friend at the time. And I knew I could trust her. I knew she wasn't going to go talking to people. But once I confessed to her and started meeting with her on a weekly basis, there was something that began to loosen. The grip. There's just like there's this grip that pornography and sexual sin can have on us. And I think when we start to bring it out into the light, And again, not with just anyone. I wasn't talking publicly about this at all at that time, but with a few trusted people, that it began to lose some of its power. And I think Satan, one of his primary tools is secrecy. And that's one of the things that pornography, one of the reasons pornography has such a strong hold, because you can do it, when no one's looking. You can log on, you can clear out your history, you can, try to, cross your T's and dot your I's and figure out a way to get that thrill. And, there is a thrill to it. There is a pleasurable feeling to it, but it never lasted for me. For me, I always had this cycle, and it would be this, wanting to get that thrill again, but then it was almost right away feeling that shame and just feeling like, oh, why did I do this? And for me, especially being a woman, being a Christian, being in ministry, knowing better, I knew better. And it was just like, oh, and I remember I just would beat myself up, and I'd just be like, oh, you're so stupid. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Why did you do that? And, I would just beat myself up. And I remember driving down the road one day after I was free and after I wasn't acting it out. I was still, there were still temptations, but I was driving down the road and I was listening to a song by Matthew West called History. And it just basically talks about how our past, it's history, it's gone. He remembers it no more. If we've confessed our sin to Christ, it's gone, and yet we tend to carry it around. And that was exactly what I was doing. And at that moment, there was just a sense of conviction that came over me. And I literally, I just started crying. And because, God was saying, Shelley, you've asked my forgiveness. I have forgiven you. You have changed. You have repented. You've forgiven those that have hurt you. Now it's time to forgive yourself. And I think that's one of the things that we often forget, is to forgive ourselves, because it's so hard, isn't it? For anyone who's struggled, it's hard to forgive yourself and to let go of that regret and the shame of the past. But it was such a freeing thing when I was finally able to get to that place. And so, that's why, even in the book, I talk about how I believe forgiveness is one of the first steps. And the reason that, some people are kind of like, really? To overcome a pornography addiction? Why? But when I was going through counseling, they used a illustration called the forgiveness cross. And the vertical part was asking God's forgiveness. The horizontal part of the cross was forgiving others. And then there was a circle in the center, forgiving yourself. And I was using a book at the time. In the book, they were talking about how, the biggest thing that gets overlooked is forgiving yourself. And I know that was the way it was for me as well. And so not only did I need to forgive those that had hurt me in this area of sexual sin, by the sexual abuse, just the relationship with my father and just different things, but I also needed to ask God's forgiveness and ask his forgiveness for my sin and truly repent, truly turn from that sin. Just like Jesus approached the woman that was caught in adultery and they were going to stone her, and he said, go and sin no more. Neither do I condemn you. Everyone had left and they don't condemn you. Neither do I condemn you. He doesn't condemn us. There's grace. There is grace. And yet, grace doesn't give us a license just to keep sinning either. And so I need to ask God for his forgiveness, and then I needed to forgive myself. And so that was, that's one of the first steps that I really talk about in my own recovery and within the book. One of the other things that I know for me is, there was a long time that I knew what I was doing was wrong, and that there was part of me that wanted help, and there was part of me that wanted to be free, but then there was part of me that wasn't quite ready to give it up. And so there had to come a point where I was desperate enough for a change. And I basically just call that surrender. My mom's a counselor as well, and I often talk to her, and she ends up, helping me and kind of counseling me at times. And, she said, Shelley, I believe most everything starts with a spirit of surrender. And so, that was just the next step, is just getting to that point where I was ready for a change. I was willing to change, and I was desperate enough for a change. And I've talked to girls, I've talked to women at times after my speaking events, and they admit and confess to me that they're struggling with pornography. But I can, just because I've been there. I mean, I can't tell, I can't know for sure, but a lot of times I can just tell those that aren't quite ready to make the sacrifices, to do the things that they need to do to truly be able to stay free. Because it's not an easy road. It's not easy. This is one of the most difficult things, I think, to overcome and to break free from, because it's everywhere, and it's just so addictive. But and then I see those that are they're at that point. They're just, wanting to be free more than anything else. And so I think just having that heart of, you know, I just call it desperation, surrender. I'm just saying, God, I am ready. I'm ready to change. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. And sometimes it takes doing some hard things. And one of the things that they helped me also in counseling was to identify some triggers. And so, the things that would trigger me probably are going to be different from, if you struggle, the things that trigger you. And so, I just what I did was I kept a calendar, and every time that I gave in to the pornography and masturbation, I would write down on the calendar on that day, what happened, and then I would look back and say, okay, was there a specific trigger? Was there something that kind of got the momentum started, that got me thinking, oh, I need to go look that up, or I need to go check some things out online, or, usually there's something that has triggered. And so I would keep track of that. And there was different things that definitely I noticed triggered me. But for me personally, one of the biggest triggers was loneliness. And when my husband would go away on ministry trips, sometimes he'd be gone for a week, maybe even sometimes 2 weeks at a time. And I'd be alone, and it was just that loneliness that a lot of times would trigger it for me. It used to be that I didn't want to be alone. It was hard to be alone even because I had so much baggage and just stuff from the past, and just things that I had just shoved down for so many years and just never dealt with. But it was hard for me to be by myself. So I would go shopping. I would go be with a friend. I'd be on the phone. I would joke that I was addicted to talking on the phone. And, now that God has worked, and he's still working, there's still stuff, but I'm able to be by myself and not feel like that intense loneliness like I used to. And I'm no longer a shopaholic. I used to say, I would use shopping, to help fill some of that void. I only go now, for fun or when I need it, or, it's not that drive that it used to be. And so, I mean, it is something that was helpful for me, and it might be helpful for you, or someone that that is struggling, to actually write out on a calendar. I printed one out, and I would just write victory, a V for victory, or an NV for no victory. And then I would just write the things that would trigger me. And it gave me insight into, the things that were tripping me up. And then those things, some of them I could either eliminate or minimize. We're not going to avoid every trigger. We're not going to avoid every temptation. We live in a sensual, sexual society. So we're not going to eliminate everything. That's why it has to come from our heart. So I believe it comes from a relationship with Christ. And that's why in my book I put Christian woman, because some people were like, why didn't you just make it more general? It's like, I really don't believe that I could have been free apart from Christ. All of the self-help things are nice, but it was only when I truly surrendered to Him that I found freedom. Another question that came in, Shelley, I know everyone is different. Did you find yourself counting days of sobriety? Do you see that as a way that we set ourselves up for failure or pressure? And when did you realize that you were far enough from it? I really didn't count days of sobriety myself. I know a lot of people do, but I can go back in my journals, and I did. As I was writing this book, I'm like, I don't even know how long it's been, but one thing I did do was, and that's another chapter in the book, I talk about journaling. I hated journaling. I hated keeping, I wasn't into keeping a diary. Like, I wasn't into journaling at all. But I really felt like God led me to begin journaling, and it was a way that I worked out some of my thoughts, my emotions. But I'm so glad that I have those journals, because I was able to look back on those journals and see that it has been 10 years that I've really had victory. And it was a couple-year process of really struggling hard, with it. But you know, I don't know if it sets us up necessarily for failure or pressure. Um, Probably in some ways, I, like I said, for me it was like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It wasn't an instant, I'm never going to do this again, and then I never did it. No, it wasn't like that at all. And so I think to give yourself some grace and to know it's going to be a process. It's going to take time. But the one thing that, like I was just talking about, that was helpful is just identifying and doing the calendar as far as identifying some of the triggers. One of the things for me, it was kind of a silly thing. Looking back, I think, why did that even bother me? But everybody's different. For me, I would walk into a video store and see some of the covers and the people that were seductively, dressed, and some of the sexual, content, and it would trigger me to want to go look things up online later. And so one of the things that I did was I would no longer go to the video store. My husband went for a while, or, now that they have like the iTunes and everything, we can, just find a movie pretty quickly on there. And we always do reviews on movies now. I know it sounds really strict. I know it sounds really crazy, but my husband and I both struggled with pornography. It wasn't just me. He also struggled. And for a part in our marriage, we both struggled silently and didn't realize we were both struggling with it. But so we really are careful about the kind of movies that we watch. If they have sex scenes, those types of things that can trigger both of us. And so we'll do movie reviews. Pluggedinonline.com is a source for that. And just watch some of the things that we rent and that we take in that way. And so, those were just a few things. And like, we talk to teenagers a lot, and so I'll talk to them. I share a talk on sexual purity, and if I share those things with them, I'm like, it's not that I'm trying to be legalistic. It's not that I'm trying to be holier than thou that I do these things. I don't watch certain music videos that are very sensual. It's a trigger for me. And it's not that I'm trying to be, like I said, legalistic. It's that I want to be free. I want to be free. And so sometimes it takes doing some hard things, but it is so worth it. At the end of my life, I'm not going to say, oh man, I wish I would have been able to watch more movies. I missed out. No, I'm going to say I'm so thankful that God brought healing in my life and that my marriage survived some really hard times. I'm getting emotional, but there was a moment that I did not think our marriage was going to survive. I never considered divorce. I never thought that was an option. And yet there was a moment that I thought about walking away. Some people will say, pornography is not a big deal. I had somebody on my Facebook page the other day trying to debate me on whether, pornography is okay for Christians. And my main thing is, I'm not trying to convince you that it's wrong or that it's right. My conviction comes from the Bible. It comes from the Word of God. I believe the Bible is God's, absolute truth, and that's the way I live my life. And I said, so if you have, an issue with what I'm saying, then, that's not something to take up necessarily with me, but with God. But we talked about it, and I'm open to talking and everything. But he was really, you know, just trying to rationalize that it can help marriages, that it's okay to bring pornography into a marriage. And I just have to say, from my personal experience, we never brought pornography into our marriage, but I never once saw it increase my sex drive necessarily and help my marriage. Maybe it might be a temporary thing, but in the long run, it only brings you apart because you're satisfying that, that sexuality and things that is meant for your husband on your own. And I like to use the illustration that sex is like a fire in a fireplace. A fire in a fireplace is awesome. It's romantic, it's warm, it's so nice. But when you take that fire out of that fireplace, if you decide to start a fire in the middle of your bedroom floor, it's going to do damage. Whether it's just smoke damage, whether it's a hole in the floor, or whether it burns your entire house down. And God intended sex, that fire, that passion, to be in the fireplace of marriage between one man and one woman. And when we take that fire, that passion of sex outside of his fireplace, there is going to be some sort of consequences or damage. And I talked when I talk to young people, I say, even if you don't feel it now, even if you don't see it now, and if you're struggling with this in your marriage and you have brought pornography into your marriage, even if you think it's helping now, even if you think reading 50 Shades of Grey is helping your sex life right now, it's just, I truly believe that when we take that fire, that sexual passion outside the fireplace of marriage, at some point there will be consequences, and we felt them. We felt those consequences in our marriage and in our sex life, and God is bringing healing. He's bringing restoration, and I'm so thankful to say that my husband and I are still married, that we are having an amazing relationship and sex life, and God is restoring that. But it's been many years of dealing with some consequences of that, and having those energies go other places as well. And so as I get ready just to close up, I just wanted to share a couple verses. Matthew 5:28. I think a lot of us know this, and a lot of people feel guilty or feel like this is a guilt trip, verse. But I just believe it's it's God's word, and it's what He says. But Jesus says in Matthew 5:28 that to look at a woman lustfully, and to look at her with lust is to commit adultery in her heart. So whether we are looking at pornography on a screen or whether we're playing it out in our mind, from images of the past or by reading an erotica novel or something like that, I believe it's still sin, still pornography. There's a definition of pornography that is from Merriam-Webster. The definition of pornography is the depiction of erotic behavior, as in pictures or writing, intended to cause sexual excitement. So that can include, watching something or thinking about something and playing that out in our minds. Either way, it's still pornography. And that I just wanted to share a couple scriptures in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, and it's verses 3 through 8. For this is the will of God, your sanctification, that you should abstain from sexual immorality, that each of you should know how to possess his own vessel in sanctification and honor, not in passion and lust, like the Gentiles who do not know God, that no one should take advantage of or defraud his brother in this matter, because the Lord is the avenger of all such things, as we also forewarned you and testified. And this is the part that I wanted to make note of. For God did not call us to uncleanness, but to holiness. Therefore, he who rejects this does not reject man, but God, who has also given us his Holy Spirit. So as I told that guy that was, talking to me on Facebook and trying to convince me that pornography is okay in marriage, I'm like, you don't, it's this isn't between you and me, you don't have to, convince me. If you reject this, I mean, this is between you and God, and you're rejecting God, and He wants the best for us. He doesn't, I mean, He's not trying to take away our fun. He's not trying to make life hard for us. That fire in the fireplace is going to be the best sex that we've ever had. Not, bringing in the other stuff, the pornography, the adultery, all the other things that can come in. That's the way to be most fulfilled. And so the good news is that there is hope. Like I shared in the beginning, there is hope because there's forgiveness and there is healing in Christ. And it's a process, usually takes time, kind of like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. It has to go in the cocoon. It takes time, but God is able to work miracles, and He's able to work healing if you'll just let Him. And I just want to close with this quote by Saint Theophan Recluse. It says, "Take one feeble step towards God, and He will take 1,000 towards you." So you just take one feeble step towards Him. You open that door a crack. You just say, "God, I'm willing. I am willing to do whatever it takes." And you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be, doing everything just right. Just take that one step, and then just take the next step, and then take the next step. And pretty soon, like me, you're going to look back and say, wow, it's been 10 years. It's been 15 years. It's been 2 years. It's been 2 months. And I just pray that God will bring that freedom for you if you're struggling. So thank you so much. And I'm going to go ahead and close down, but feel free to contact me at my website. It's christianwomenandporn.com. christianwomenandporn.com, and feel free to contact me. There's a contact form if you have any other questions. So thank you so much.